So I'm going to get into Eubank Ben recap from the fight. My prediction from the fight before it happened was that Conor Benn would win and win comfortably. He did win and win comfortably, and this isn't a video to point that out. It's more a video to highlight the reasons why I said what I said, and what I said did show its face on Saturday night. And what I said was that Chris Eubank was done and is finished, and without sounding harsh, he shot and he couldn't see the shots coming towards him. He couldn't get out the way of the shots. He couldn't deal with the shots that were coming to him. He was being beaten to the jab constantly by Conor Benn, who is a welterweight and 5'8", and we've seen this Chris Eubank trying to match it in the battle of jabs with the likes of George Groves, Arthur Abraham, really notable good jabbers who I've also been in the ring with. So the fact that it's been out jabbed by someone like Conor Benn says it all. But I'm going to break down what I felt went wrong in the fight for Eubank, what went right for Conor Benn, what the next steps are going to be, what the next stages of the careers are going to be, because I think that's probably the end of the road now for Chris Eubank Jr. And Conor Benn, where does he go from here? So the result was as expected, as I've said, and I picked Conor Benn before the fight for the reason that I just think Chris Eubank is done. And what I mean by done, I've been saying this for a few years now. I've been saying this since my brother Liam beat him, and then afterwards, even though Liam lost the rematch, Liam had his injuries and his own problems in that fight, but the writing was on the wall there for me to see. And it was clear to see that Eubank didn't have much to offer with anyone who was going to be probably bigger than Conor Benn or stronger than Conor Benn or anyone that was decent. And no disrespect to Conor Benn, I didn't think he was going to bring it out of him in the first fight or the second fight because of the size. But after the first fight, I picked Conor Benn immediately to win because I felt like he was hurting Chris Eubank in the first fight. He caught him, he got to him. And listen, the first fight was a great fight. It was really good to watch, but the second fight was never going to live up to that if Chris Eubank couldn't rise to that level again. And Conor Benn did box disciplined. He did box really well, but he could only really beat him what was in front of him. So it's hard to say this without sounding negative to Conor Benn. And I'm not trying to be negative towards him. I just think, obviously, he's done what he had to do and beat Chris Eubank, who was a shell of his old self in there on the night. But I think with regards to how the fight went, how the scoring of the fight was, it wasn't really difficult to score. There was probably very limited people out there who would have gave Chris Eubank a round or two maximum, and I think that reflected on the judges' scorecards. The two knockdowns at the end of the fight just literally put the icing on the cake for Conor Benn. But it was a very good, comfortable, clear win for Conor Benn, and I think it was probably a testament to just how bad Chris Eubank was there on the night. So what do I mean by when I'm saying Chris Eubank is shot or is finished? And it's literally what it says on the tin. I don't think he has any reactions left. I don't think his timing is there anymore. I don't think the speed is what it was. The power will still be there, whatever power he had, but when I'm watching him being beaten to the jab by Conor Benn, when I'm watching him not taking the type of shots that wouldn't have affected him years ago. I've been saying this on social media, I've been saying it to people that will listen when I'm speaking in person, and I've said it on record a few times now that I think Chris Eubank is not what he was at all. And it's no disrespect to him either. It's hard to say it without sounding like you're being negative or you're criticising. I'm not criticising. I'm just saying what I see as someone who knows boxing, as someone who loves boxing and admires boxing. And from what I've seen for a few years now, obviously since my brother Liam beat him, that's not the Chris Eubank that was holding his own as super middleweight with super middleweights. And being down at 160, people saying it was the weight. I'll come on to the weight shortly, but that's not the issue in the fight. And again, it needs its own segment, so I'll get to that shortly. But the fact that he's not taking the shots that he used to take, his chin, his punch resistance is gone. I think it's clear and easy to see that wasn't Chris Eubank that we know in the past. So there's so many other elements that come into play. The weight limit, the whether he's been ill. I've heard a few rumours that he might have been ill and he is ill and something's up with him, but that would explain a little bit as well. But I think ultimately the reason that he's done is obviously because it's just not there anymore. It's age and it catches up with all of us and it beats everyone. I noticed it in my last fight. I was 34 fighting a 24-year-old man, and I could tell and I could see the shots. I just couldn't pull the trigger. And a year earlier I would have beat him easily, and it just wasn't there, and that was it, done. And I'm never going to box competitively in a boxing ring again because of that reason. That was 8-9 years ago now, and I don't regret the fact that my career went the way it did, but at the end I probably should have been in there myself. But you age overnight, and the fighter is usually the first to know but the last to admit it, and admitting is very difficult to do because you're admitting to yourself that it's the end of the line. You're admitting to yourself that it's over, that your career's done. Tasha Jonas, my own mate, said the saying, the athlete dies twice, and that's so true. And when you admit that it's not there no more, you're admitting that the athlete is dead, and you have to rebuild and create yourself again and find yourself and not the fighter and go from there. And I think that's what Chris Eubank will have to do. But listen, he's earned very comfortably off boxing. He's in a comfortable position from boxing, and rightly so. Good luck to him, and I hope he enjoys the spoils of war for the rest of his days as a non-fighter, or as a civilian, as some will call it. But he's had a great career to be proud of, and he's been in there with some top names, and he's had some unbelievable nights, like the 2 nights at Tottenham Hotspur's ground. So when I say about Conor Benn being flattered, I think that performance was a good performance. It was disciplined, it was measured, it was a thinking man's performance. He was beating Eubank to the jab. And I said this time and time again, if you come out in the first round and you're having that much success, and all of a sudden this man who beat you last time, it was probably the easiest round Conor Benn's had in a long time, then you're walking back to the corner, you're sitting down with a smile on your face, and you're thinking, I'm feeling good here. And then you're going to come out the next round exactly the same way. So there's no real need to pull the trigger or to force the fight or to go for it in the fight or up the pace, should we say, because he's winning and winning comfortably anyway. After the first round, he must have sat down and just thought, this is going to be easy here. And it was easy for him. I think it was an easy night for him. And I think one of the best nights of his life, obviously being paid a monster payday and having received a monster payday in the first fight. And now people are talking about him fighting for world titles and fighting against the likes of Barrios and Lewis Crocker for titles at welterweight. And I don't think that jump down is going to be easy, or as easy as he thinks it'll be. And I'll get onto that in the next little bit that I'm going to do. But for now, we'll speak about obviously how I think Benn was a bit flattered, and therefore I hope he doesn't rush into something quick, as in jumping at the deep end for the world title, because it could be a bit of false sense of security beating someone like Chris Eubank in that shape and in that condition, to then jump in with one of the big boys at 147, which is going to be a very difficult weight cut for you to get down after being at middleweight and light middle for the last 2 years. And B, the ability levels of these world champions. There is levels to boxing. Chris Eubank never won a world title, whether you like it or not. He wasn't good enough to win a world title, and he had the opportunities. So that type of fighter beating him, to then think you're okay to then jump in with a world champion, when, with all due respect to Conor Benn, he hasn't won the British title. He hasn't really been tested as much as he should in his career early on to set him up for that world title. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does, and I hope he has a couple more tough fights in the meantime, or a tick-over fight, or a good, even, steady match in an eliminator or a final eliminator or something, just to ease himself in at welterweight again. He's moving down 2 weight limits. We're okay listening to him saying he's jumping up in 2 weight limits. You're now jumping down 2 weight limits, and that's going to be difficult for him and difficult on his body after such a long time fighting at a weight or 2 above. So whether he gets those fights or not is another issue. Can he beat the likes of Lewis Crocker? I don't think so personally. Can he beat Barrios? Possibly. And there's the doable fights out there. I've seen Ryan Garcia signed up for one, so that might be out of there. But I think the Lewis Crocker fight is probably the easiest one to make, with him being with the same promoter and from the same region in the UK. And I think although it's easier to make, Lewis Crocker would love that fight because it's a big payday for him. I just don't see Benn beating Lewis Crocker. That's just my opinion. I rate Lewis Crocker. I think he's a decent fighter. I think he did great in his last couple of fights as well. Certainly the last fight. And he deserves his title, and hopefully his first defence will be a good one for him as well. But it's interesting to see what's going to happen, and I don't think it's as easy and as clear cut as people or Conor Benn would think it's going to be for him. So what's next for Chris Eubank? For me, I think he's done. I think he needs to retire, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way or a negative way at all. I just think he's had a very difficult career. He's had a brilliant career for him, and usually sons of legends or sons of fighters like Chris Eubank Sr., not much was expected from him. I certainly wasn't expecting much. And there was a saying after the fight on Saturday night, what Conor Benn said, not bad for 2 silver spoon kids, eh? And it was probably right. And they don't have to fight. They've never had to fight. They've never had to probably struggle a day financially, hardship-wise, growing up like the old stereotypical boxer does. But they want it, and the desire was there, and it always has been there. The determination, the discipline, the fitness, the hard work, they've put the work in, and they deserve it. They're certainly not silver spoon fighters. They're certainly not, being given opportunities that they shouldn't be getting apart from the fathers, apart from that last fight, or the last 2 fights, should I say. It's always been building up. It's something that I never thought I would see happen, because obviously Conor Benn is a lot smaller and lighter, but the rest is obviously history, as they say, and we've seen it happening. But the next steps for Eubank, for me now, he's had a lot of hard fights. He's had a good career. He's earned plenty of money. He lives an extravagant life, and hopefully a lot of that's just for show, because A lot of the money that he's made may not last that long if you live in that extravagant, but I think he'll be okay. I think he's a very smart, sensible lad inside, and me personally, I've grown to tongue-in-cheek like him, and to smirk at some of the things I've been seeing him saying and doing in the press conferences, and just like his father, I think in the end he endeared to the public in a good way, and then all of a sudden he become a likeable character rather than someone you love to hate, which was the case early on in his career. So for me, he's had a great career. He's had one that he should be very proud of, but I would personally like to see him never fight again. And if he retires, which I think he might, then I hope he does it, and I hope he's healthy and he lives a happy life and enjoys, as I said before, the spoils of war, because he's earned really well out of boxing and done really well out of boxing. So this weekend from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, November 22nd, we've got David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde for the WBC light heavyweight title, which is held by Benavidez. It's a good fight on paper. It's a good fight for the fight fans and for the people who are admiring the light heavyweight division, which I've got a very keen eye on because my brother Callum is WBO interim world champion. He's fought Beterbiev, who's at the top. He's beat Joshua Buatsi recently. After moving up from super middleweight and being the super middleweight world champion, he wants to now become a two-weight world champion and win a title at light heavyweight, which he now has the interim title. We've just seen Fabio Wardley be upgraded from interim title to the full world title in the heavyweight division. I'm not sure whether Callum actually wants that to happen or whether he wants to win it in the ring and hear the words and the new, but he heard them words and the new with the interim title when he beat Joshua Buatsi. And if the belt is upgraded, then he becomes full champion, and he will have his eye firmly on the winner of this fight on Saturday. Well, this fight on Saturday for me is and should be a relatively one-sided fight. I think Benavidez is far better than Anthony Yarde. No disrespect to Anthony Yarde at all. I think he's a nice lad. I've always got on with him. I've always been respectful and polite and received it from him. It's always been reciprocated. He's a good fighter, but there is levels to boxing now. He gave a good effort, a really good effort against Artur Beterbiev in his last World Challenge, and in his first World title challenge he gave a great effort against Sergei Kovalev. I always felt his best chance of winning a world title was against Sergei Kovalev because of the age and because of the condition that he was in, should I say, coming towards the end of his career, whereas Beterbiev had a little bit more left in the tank and had not half as many hard fights as Kovalev had. But against both of them, the pattern was similar, and he came up short in both of them due to not having the engine to last the full 12 rounds. And he's come out and he's had a good effort, and a really good effort for the first 5, 6, 7 rounds, but by the time 8 rounds come, he's done, and there's no fitness left, there's no work rate, there's no punch output, there's no volume of punches, and it's survival mode from then on in. And my issue with that, as always, is that a problem in the gym? Is that a problem with how you're training or how you're sparring, or the lack of training or the lack of sparring, or is that inexperience where you're starting in 5th gear against a better fighter? We've seen that time and time again in fights, and it's easy to see when someone is in there with someone who is a lot better than them, or different levels to them, or has a lot more experience than them. Then we usually see the fighter who's less experienced starting in 4th or 5th gear, and from then on there's only one way to go, and that's down, and the champion will ease their way into it and up the gears as they go. And I think that was the case in his first 2 fights, so he's got to be very, very careful that he doesn't start too fast in this fight. But also, not starting fast doesn't mean to start slow, so he's going to have to pace himself. He's going to hope, or one would hope, that he's going to be a lot fitter for this fight than he was for his previous 2 world title fights. If he is, then it makes the fight more interesting, because he can handle himself, he's capable. He's not, in my opinion, one of the best light heavyweights in the world, but he's a talented fighter, and I still feel there's a little bit more to come from him. If it comes on Saturday night, then he has a decent chance. But I think this fight will be a case of he's got to be perfect, and he's got to hope that Benavidez is not perfect. And for me, the smart money would be on Benavidez stopping Anthony Yarde late on in the fight. And for me, the points decision for Benavidez also looks tempting. But I think he'll have enough in the tank, and judging by Anthony Yarde's previous world title challenges, the tank will empty on him. And I feel Benavidez is the type of fighter who's hungry for his first knockout at light heavyweight. And I think he'll force the issue and probably get the stoppage late on in that fight. So we'll be back on next week to talk about that and to recap that, and then to preview a few other things that are coming up. And I'll have a little interesting topic to talk about on the next show as well.